I walked through the door holding a bouquet of white lilies, the kind with the soft petals that catch the afternoon light just right. They cost me 40 minutes of waiting at the florist after work because I wanted them fresh, not the half-wilted ones they keep up front. She was on the couch with her laptop, scrolling through something that had her full attention. I stood there for a second, waiting for her to look up. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. When she finally did, her eyes landed on the flowers, then back to my face, and she laughed. Not a small chuckle, a full, rolling laugh that filled the living room like I'd just told the world's best joke. "How pathetic," she said, still grinning. "You actually bought flowers? What are you, 12?" She went back to her screen without another word, shaking her head like I'd embarrassed myself in front of company. I stood there holding those lilies, feeling the weight of them in my hand, and something shifted. Not anger, not hurt, just clarity. I set them on the kitchen counter without a vase, grabbed a glass of water, and walked to the bedroom. The flowers stayed there for 3 days until the petals started browning and I threw them in the trash myself. That was the last time I bought her anything that wasn't a necessity. My name is Allen Erni, and I work as a logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping company that moves freight up and down the Eastern Corridor. It's not glamorous. I spent my days on the phone with truckers, dispatchers, and warehouse supervisors, making sure pallets get where they need to go on time. The office is a converted factory space with high ceilings, exposed pipes, and desks that wobble if you lean too hard. I've been there 8 years, moved up twice, and I'm good at what I do because I don't overcomplicate things. A load needs to move, I move it. A driver has an issue, I solve it. Simple problems, simple fixes. My wife, Cassandra, works in marketing for a tech startup downtown. Her office has a juice bar, standing desks, and motivational posters that say things like, "Disrupt the ordinary," and "Think beyond limits." She talks about campaigns and brand synergy and quarterly projections the way some people talk about religion. When we first met, I liked that she had ambition. She was sharp, she was driven, and she didn't apologize for wanting more. But somewhere along the way, wanting more became needing more, and needing more became expecting more, and expecting more landed on my shoulders like a debt I never signed up for. We lived in a townhouse on the north side of the city, nothing fancy but clean. 2 bedrooms, a small yard I kept mowed, a garage I used for storage, and the occasional oil change. The mortgage was manageable when we split it down the middle, but a year ago she suggested I take on a bigger share because her student loans were eating into her budget. I agreed because it seemed fair at the time. Her loans, her education, her career. I figured helping her get ahead was part of being a partner. Then the loans got paid off. The split didn't change back. When I brought it up, she said she was saving for investments and that I shouldn't be so rigid about money. Investments turned out to be a new wardrobe, bi-weekly nail appointments, and a gym membership at a boutique studio where classes cost more than my weekly grocery bill. I didn't fight it. I just started tracking expenses in a notebook I kept in my truck. I'm not the kind of person who likes confrontation, but I'm also not the kind who forgets. The flower incident happened on a Tuesday. I'd been thinking about it all week because we'd had a decent weekend. We went to a farmer's market, grabbed breakfast at a place she liked, and didn't argue once. It felt normal, like the early days when we actually enjoyed each other. So I figured flowers might be a nice gesture, something to say, "I see you, I appreciate you, I'm still trying." Instead, I got a laugh and a word that stuck in my chest like a splinter: pathetic. That night, she went out with her coworker Justine to some wine bar that just opened. She didn't ask if I wanted to come, she just said she'd be back late and left. I sat in the living room with the TV on mute, staring at those flowers on the counter. They looked ridiculous sitting there without water, without acknowledgement, wilting in real time. I thought about throwing them out right then, but I didn't. I wanted to see how long it would take for her to notice, to say something, to care. She never did. The next morning, I woke up to an empty bed. She'd come in late and taken the guest room without a word. I made coffee, poured 2 cups out of habit, and then dumped hers down the sink when I realized she wasn't coming out. I left for work at 6, same as always, and spent the morning rerouting a delayed shipment through Pittsburgh because a driver called in sick. Problems I could solve. Clear inputs, clear outputs. At lunch, my buddy Carlos from the warehouse asked if I wanted to grab a sandwich. We sat outside on the loading dock with our feet hanging off the edge, watching forklifts shuffle pallets like a slow-motion ballet. He asked how things were at home. I told him fine, which is what you say when you don't want to explain. He looked at me sideways and said, "You've got that look, man. The one people get when they're holding something heavy and pretending it's light." I didn't argue. I just ate my sandwich and let the silence do the talking. Carlos has been married 15 years, 3 kids, and a wife who packs his lunch every morning with a note inside. He doesn't brag about it, but you can see it in the way he talks about going home. There's no dread in it, no calculation, just a man who likes where he's headed. I used to feel that way. Now I just feel like I'm completing tasks. That evening, Cassandra came home with bags from a department store. She dropped them on the couch and asked what was for dinner. I was at the stove making chicken and rice. Nothing fancy, just something to fill the gap. I told her 20 minutes. She said she wasn't that hungry anyway and pulled a salad kit from the fridge, the expensive kind with the dressing in a separate pouch. We ate in silence. I finished first, washed my plate, and went to the garage to organize some tools I'd been meaning to sort. I stayed out there until I heard her go upstairs, then I came back in and locked up for the night. The flowers were still on the counter. I threw them out before bed. She didn't notice the next morning either. Friday, she announced she was going to a spa weekend with Justine and 2 other women from her office. It was already booked, already paid for, already decided. She told me this while putting on her earrings in front of the bathroom mirror, not looking at me, just stating facts like she was reading off a schedule. I asked when she booked it. She said last week. I asked why she didn't mention it. She said she didn't think it was a big deal. I asked how much it cost. She paused, met my eyes in the mirror, and said, "It's my money, Allen. I can spend it how I want." I nodded. She was right. It was her money. But I'd been covering the mortgage solo for months, plus utilities, plus groceries, plus the random repairs that come with owning a place. I didn't say that out loud. I just walked out of the bathroom and went to work. That night, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled up our joint account and looked at the full transaction history. Not just the big stuff, but everything. The monthly charges, the impulse buys, the subscriptions I didn't know we had. Streaming services we never used. Meal kits that showed up half the time. A premium app for meditation that cost more than my phone bill. I added it up in my notebook. 3 months of discretionary spending. Her column was 4 times the size of mine. I wasn't mad. I was just done pretending I didn't notice. Saturday morning, I went to the bank and opened a separate checking account. I moved my paycheck deposit over and set up autopay for my half of the mortgage and utilities. Everything else stayed in the joint account, which now had exactly enough to cover fixed costs, and nothing more. No buffer, no overflow, just math. I didn't tell her. I just did it. She left for her spa weekend at noon. I spent the afternoon cleaning out the garage, a task I'd been avoiding because it required sorting through things we'd accumulated together. Old camping gear we hadn't used in 3 years, a boxed set of dishes from her aunt that we never unboxed, a bin of my tools mixed with her seasonal decorations. I separated everything into 2 piles, mine, hers. It felt clinical, but I needed the clarity. By Sunday evening, I had 3 boxes labeled and stacked by the side door. I didn't throw anything out. I just made space. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. When she got home, she breezed past them without a glance, talking about the massage she got and the organic facial that left her skin glowing. She looked relaxed. She looked happy. She didn't ask about my weekend. Monday morning, the joint account had a declined charge. It was her gym membership, the one that auto-drafted every month. She called me at work, her voice tight and annoyed. "The card isn't working," she said. "Fix it." I told her I moved my paycheck to a separate account. The joint account covers our shared expenses now. Anything outside of that comes from your own money. There was a pause. Then she said, "You're seriously doing this?" I'm seriously being clear about what I'm responsible for, I replied. She hung up. That afternoon, my supervisor Rick called me into his office. Rick's a good guy, been with the company 20 years, knows every driver by name, and runs the logistics floor like a well-oiled engine. He's also got 3 daughters and a son, so he's seen his share of life complications. He leaned back in his chair and said, "You okay, Allen? You've been solid as always, but I can tell when someone's carrying extra weight." "I'm managing," I told him. He nodded. "Managing is what we do when we can't fix it yet. Just don't let it eat you from the inside." I've seen good people turn bitter because they waited too long to deal with their own mess. I appreciated the advice. I told him I'd handle it. He said he believed me and sent me back to the floor. That night, Cassandra was waiting when I got home. She was sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, her face set in that expression she uses when she's about to negotiate something she's already decided on. "We need to talk," she said. I set my keys down and sat across from her. "All right. This account thing is childish," she started. "We're supposed to be partners. Partners don't nickel and dime each other." "Partners also don't laugh at flowers," I replied. She blinked. "That was a week ago. You're still hung up on that?" "I'm not hung up. I'm adjusted." She crossed her arms. "You're punishing me because I didn't react the way you wanted. That's manipulative, Allen." "I'm funding what I agreed to fund," I said. "Mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance. Everything else is personal choice. Your choices, your budget. So you're just going to sit there and act like you're some kind of martyr?" "I'm acting like someone who pays attention," I answered. "You've spent 4 times what I have in the last 3 months. I'm not subsidizing a lifestyle I don't live." Her jaw tightened. "You make it sound like I'm bleeding you dry." "I'm saying I'm done pretending we're on the same page when we're reading different books." She stood up, grabbed her laptop, and walked toward the stairs. "You're impossible," she said over her shoulder. "I'm clear," I called back. She didn't respond. I heard the guest room door close. I sat at the table for a while, looking at the empty chair across from me, and felt nothing but relief. The rest of the week passed in a strange kind of silence. She stopped asking me to fix things, to move money, to cover her extras. She stopped initiating conversation altogether. We existed in the same space like roommates with a shared lease, polite but distant. I made my meals, she made hers. I left for work early, she left later. We didn't fight because there was nothing left to fight about. On Thursday, Carlos and I were loading a manifest when he asked if things got better at home. I told him they got clearer, which isn't the same thing, but it's closer to the truth. He said, "Clear is good, man. Clear means you can see where you're walking." Friday afternoon, I got a text from Cassandra. Her friend Justine is having people over tomorrow night. She said I should come, that it would be good for us to be social together, that people were starting to ask questions. I replied, "I'll pass. You go. Have fun." She wrote back, "You're really going to make me go alone?" "You've been doing everything else alone," I typed. "This shouldn't be different." She didn't respond. Saturday, I drove out to a state park about an hour north. I took my old hiking boots, a water bottle, and a sandwich I made that morning. The trails were quiet, just me and the sound of gravel under my feet. I walked for 3 hours, no phone, no distractions, just trees and sky, and the kind of silence that lets you think without interruption. I thought about the flowers, I thought about the laugh. I thought about the moment I realized I was working 2 jobs, one that paid me and one that cost me, and only one of them was worth keeping. By the time I got back to my truck, I knew what I needed to do next. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just out of respect for the person I used to be before I started bending myself into shapes that didn't fit. I drove home as the sun started to set, the sky turning that deep orange that makes everything look temporary. When I pulled into the driveway, Cassandra's car was gone. The house was empty. I walked through each room, taking stock of what mattered and what didn't. The couch we bought together didn't matter. The coffee table she picked out didn't matter. The framed print in the hallway that I never liked but agreed to because it made her happy didn't matter. What mattered was my grandfather's toolbox in the garage, the watch my father gave me when I got my first real job, the small wooden box on my dresser that held cufflinks, a pocket knife, and a challenge coin from a friend who served overseas. The notebook in my truck where I'd been keeping track of everything that didn't add up. I made a list, not of grievances, not of complaints, just a list of things I wouldn't negotiate on anymore. Respect, honesty, effort, partnership that flows both ways. If those things weren't in the room, I didn't need to be in the room either. Sunday morning, Cassandra came home while I was making coffee. She looked tired, like the night had been longer than expected. She poured herself a cup without a word and sat at the table. After a minute, she said, "Justine thinks we should see a counselor." I looked at her. "What do you think?" She shrugged. "I think we're not connecting. Maybe someone else can help us figure out why." I sat down across from her. "I know why. You don't respect me. You haven't in a long time." She stared at me. "That's not fair." "It's accurate," I replied. "You laughed at me for buying you flowers. You dismissed me when I asked for financial balance. You make plans without me and expect me to fall in line. That's not a partnership. That's a performance where I'm the stagehand." Her face went hard. "So what? You're just giving up?" "I'm not giving up," I said. "I'm waking up. There's a difference." She stood, grabbed her coffee, and walked to the living room. I heard the TV click on. I finished my cup, washed it, and went to the garage. I spent the rest of the day organizing my tools, labeling boxes, and creating space. Monday, I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted a fight, because I wanted a plan. The lawyer's name was Mary Ann, and her office was in a converted house near the courthouse. She listened while I explained the situation, took notes, and asked practical questions about assets, income, and intent. At the end, she said, "You sound like someone who's already made up their mind." "I am," I told her. "I just need to do it right." She nodded. "Then let's do it right." I left her office with paperwork, a timeline, and a strange sense of calm. I wasn't running towards something better. I was walking away from something broken. That felt like enough. The paperwork sat in my truck for 2 days before I signed it. Not because I was hesitating, I just wanted to be sure I was signing it for the right reasons. On Wednesday morning, before my shift started, I pulled into a coffee shop parking lot, spread the documents across my steering wheel, and read through every page. Mary Ann had been thorough. Asset division, timelines, required disclosures. Everything laid out in clean legal language that stripped emotion from the equation. I signed my name on the last page with a pen I kept in my glove box, the kind that doesn't smudge even when your hands are shaking. My hands weren't shaking. I felt steady in a way I hadn't felt in months. I drove to Mary Ann's office, dropped the envelope in her after-hours slot, and went to work like it was any other day. Carlos noticed something different when I walked onto the floor. "You got a haircut or something?" he asked. "No," I said. "Just slept better." He nodded slowly. "Sleep'll do that. Makes a man look like he's got his feet under him again." I grabbed my clipboard and started routing the morning deliveries. 3 trucks heading south, 2 heading west, 1 stuck in Maryland with a blown tire that needed a replacement driver. I made the calls, sent the texts, moved the freight. Simple problems with simple solutions. By noon, everything was running smooth. At lunch, I didn't sit with Carlos. I drove to a park a few blocks from the office and ate a sandwich I'd packed that morning. Turkey, mustard, nothing fancy. I sat on a bench near a pond where ducks paddled in slow circles, and I watched the water move without thinking about anything in particular. It felt good to let my brain idle for a while. My phone buzzed. A text from Cassandra. "We need to discuss the mortgage payment. It's due Friday." I texted back. "My half will be in the account Thursday night. Yours needs to be there too." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. She was typing something, deleting it, starting over. Finally, she just said, "Fine." I finished my sandwich, tossed the wrapper in a trash can, and drove back to work. The afternoon passed in a blur of manifests and route adjustments. By the time I clocked out, the sun was low and orange, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I sat in my truck for a minute before starting the engine, just letting the quiet settle. When I got home, Cassandra's car was in the driveway. I walked in to find her in the kitchen, pulling things out of the fridge like she was searching for something specific but couldn't remember what. She glanced at me, then back at the fridge. "I'm ordering Thai," she said. "You want anything?" "I'm good," I told her. "I'll make something here." She closed the fridge and leaned against the counter. "We can't keep doing this, Allen." "Doing what?" "This." She waved her hand vaguely. "The cold shoulder, the separate everything. It's exhausting." I set my keys on the counter. "You laughed at me for trying. That was exhausting too." She sighed, the kind of sigh people use when they think you're being difficult on purpose. "I didn't mean it the way you took it." "How did you mean it?" She looked at the ceiling like the answer was written there. "I don't know. It just felt over the top. We're not those people, Allen. We don't do grand gestures." "Flowers aren't grand," I said. "They're basic. They're what people do when they're thinking about someone." "Well, I wasn't expecting it," she replied. "It caught me off guard." "So you laughed?" She didn't answer. She just grabbed her phone and started scrolling through a delivery app. I walked past her, went upstairs, and changed out of my work clothes. When I came back down, she was on the couch with her laptop, the Thai food order already placed. I made eggs and toast, ate at the kitchen table, and cleaned my plate. The house felt too big and too quiet, like we were two strangers renting space in the same building. I went to the garage and spent an hour rewiring an old lamp I'd been meaning to fix. The work was simple: strip the old wire, thread the new one, reconnect the socket. When I plugged it in, the bulb glowed steady and bright. I brought it inside and set it on the side table in the living room. Cassandra glanced at it, then back at her screen. "That's nice," she said, her tone flat. "It works now," I replied. She nodded without looking up. Thursday morning, I transferred my half of the mortgage into the joint account and sent her a screenshot of the confirmation. She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. At work, Rick asked me to walk a new hire through the routing system. The kid's name was Jordan, fresh out of college, eager in the way people are when they don't know how repetitive the job can get. I showed him how to read the manifests, how to cross-check load numbers with driver schedules, how to flag delays before they became problems. He asked good questions, took notes, and didn't complain when I gave him the grunt work of updating spreadsheets. By the end of the day, he'd picked up the rhythm. "You're a natural at this," he said as we locked up the office. "It's just patterns," I told him. "Once you see them, you can't unsee them." He laughed. "Sounds like a curse." "Sometimes it is," I replied. That night, Cassandra's half of the mortgage still hadn't hit the account. I checked twice, just to be sure I wasn't missing something. I sent her a text. "Mortgage is due tomorrow. Your half isn't in yet." She called instead of texting. I answered on the second ring. "I'm short this month," she said, no preamble. "Can you cover me? I'll pay you back." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "Short how?" I had some unexpected expenses.
The car needed work. I had to buy a new laptop for a project. Things add up. "Those are your expenses," I said. "The mortgage is a shared expense." "I know, Allen, but I'm asking for help. Isn't that what partners do?" "Partners also plan ahead," I replied, "and they don't laugh at flowers." There was a long silence. Then she said, "You're really going to hold that over me forever, aren't you?" "I'm not holding anything," I said. "I'm just not covering things I didn't agree to cover." "So you're going to let us miss a mortgage payment?" "I'm going to make my payment," I told her. "What you do with yours is your call." She hung up. I set the phone on the nightstand and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. I thought about calling her back, about smoothing it over, about being the bigger person. Then I thought about the flowers wilting on the counter and decided I was done being bigger than the space I was given. Friday morning, her payment came through at 8 a.m. No text, no explanation, just the transaction. I checked the joint account, confirmed everything was covered, and went to work. Carlos asked if I wanted to grab a beer after shift. I told him maybe next week. The weekend stretched out quiet and long. Cassandra spent most of Saturday with Justine, something about shopping for a work event. I used the time to go through old boxes in the garage, sorting through things I hadn't looked at in years. College textbooks I'd never open again. Cables for electronics I no longer owned. A set of weights I hadn't lifted since we moved in. I filled 2 boxes for donation and 1 for trash. By the time I finished, the garage felt lighter, more organized. I swept the floor, wiped down the workbench, and stood in the doorway looking at the clean space. It felt like progress. Sunday, I drove out to visit my brother Nathan. He lives about 40 minutes west, in a small house with a big yard where his 2 kids run wild most weekends. Nathan's wife, Kelly, greeted me at the door with a hug and a warning that the kids were in full chaos mode. Inside, my niece Emma was building a tower out of blocks, while my nephew Lucas tried to knock it down with a foam sword. Nathan was on the couch with a beer, watching them with the kind of tired smile that says, "This is exactly what I signed up for." He handed me a beer and we sat on the back porch while Kelly took the kids inside for a snack. The yard was green and wide, the kind of space that makes you forget you're still in the same county as the city. "You'll look better," Nathan said after a while. "Better than what?" "Better than last time I saw you. You had that look, the one where you're here but not really here." I took a sip of the beer. "Things are clearing up." He nodded. "Kelly said something was off when we had you over for the barbecue last month. She didn't pry, but she noticed." "Kelly notices everything," I said. "That's why I married her," he replied. "So, you want to talk about it, or just sit here and pretend we're deep?" "I'm handling it," I told him. He looked at me sideways. "Handling it how?" "The right way," I said. "Legal, clean, no drama." He let out a low whistle. "You filing?" I nodded. He leaned back in his chair and stared at the yard. "You sure?" "I've been sure for a while," I said. "I just needed to stop pretending I wasn't." Nathan didn't push. He just sat with me in the quiet, and after a few minutes, he said, "You need anything? You call. Couch, cash, someone to help you move, whatever." I appreciate that. We finished our beers and went inside. Kelly had set out sandwiches, and the kids were already tearing into theirs. I stayed for another hour, playing a quick round of some card game Emma insisted I needed to learn, and then I hugged everyone goodbye and drove home. The house was dark when I got back. Cassandra's car was gone. I didn't text to ask where she was. I just went inside, made a simple dinner, and watched a documentary about freight trains. The narrator's voice was calm and informative, the kind of sound that fills a space without demanding anything from you. Monday, Mary Ann called. "The paperwork's been filed," she said. "She'll be served within the next few days. Are you ready for that?" "I'm ready," I told her. "She's going to react. Be prepared for calls, texts, maybe some anger. Don't engage more than you need to. Keep everything documented." "Understood." "And Allen," she added, "don't let guilt pull you backward. You're doing this for a reason." "I know," I said. The call ended, and I sat in my truck in the work parking lot, feeling the weight of what was coming. Not dread, just awareness. The machine was in motion now, and there was no stopping it without breaking something worse. Tuesday passed without incident. Wednesday, I got a call from an unknown number around lunchtime. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from a process server confirming they'd delivered the documents to Cassandra at her office. My chest tightened for a second, then released. It was done. She didn't call, she didn't text. I went through the rest of my shift like normal, routing freight, managing drivers, solving small problems that popped up throughout the day. At 4, my phone buzzed. A text from her. Just one word. Why? I stared at the screen for a long time. I could have written a paragraph. I could have listed every moment, every dismissal, every laugh that landed like a slap. Instead, I just typed, "Because I deserve better." She didn't respond. That night, I stayed late at the warehouse. Rick had already gone home, and the floor was quiet except for the hum of the overhead lights. I walked the rows of pallets, checking tags, making notes for tomorrow's schedule. The work was meditative, the kind of task that lets your mind wander without losing focus. Around 7, Carlos called. "You still there?" "Yeah," I said, just wrapping up. "You eaten?" "Not yet. Meet me at Angelo's in 20. I'm buying." I locked up the warehouse and drove to Angelo's, a pizza place near the box that's been there since before either of us were born. Carlos was already in a booth with 2 slices and a pitcher of soda. I slid in across from him and grabbed a slice. We ate in silence for a few minutes. Then he said, You filed, didn't you? I looked at him. How'd you know? Because you've got that look. The one people get when they finally stop carrying something they should have put down years ago.
I nodded. She got served today. How'd she take it? Haven't heard from her, I said. Just one text asking why. What'd you say? I told her I deserve better. Carlos raised his soda cup. Damn right you do. We finished the pizza and talked about work, about nothing, about everything except the thing that was sitting heavy between us. When we were done, he walked me to my truck and clapped me on the shoulder. You're gonna be all right, Allen. You've got a good head. You'll land on your feet. I drove home through streets that felt different now, like I was seeing them for the first time, even though I'd driven them 1,000 times before. When I pulled into the driveway, Cassandra's car was there. The lights were on inside. I sat in the truck for a minute, steadying myself. Then I walked in. She was sitting at the kitchen table with the documents spread out in front of her. Her face was red, her eyes puffy. She looked up when I walked in. "You really did this," she said, her voice cracking. "I really did," I replied. She stood up, her hand shaking. "You didn't even try. You didn't even give me a chance to fix it." "I gave you a year of chances," I said. "I gave you flowers, I gave you patience, I gave you respect, even when you didn't give it back. You laughed at me, Cassandra. You made me feel small for trying." She wiped her eyes. "I didn't mean it like that." "It doesn't matter how you meant it," I said. "It's how it landed." She sat back down, her shoulders slumping. "So, that's it? You're just done?" "I'm done pretending," I told her. "I'm done bending myself into shapes that don't fit. I'm done funding a life that doesn't include me." She looked at the papers, then back at me. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "The lawyers will handle the rest." I walked past her, went upstairs, and started packing a duffel bag. Clothes, toiletries, my grandfather's toolbox from the closet. She appeared in the doorway, watching me. "Where are you going?" "Nathan's," I said. "Just for a few days while we figure out the next steps." "You're leaving tonight?" "I'm giving us both space," I replied. She didn't argue. She just stood there, arms crossed, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. I zipped the bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked past her without another word. In my truck, I sat with the engine running, looking at the house through the windshield. It didn't feel like home anymore. It hadn't for a while. I backed out of the driveway and drove toward Nathan's place, the road stretching out in front of me like a line I'd finally decided to follow. Nathan opened the door before I even knocked. Kelly must have texted him. He took one look at the duffel bag and stepped aside. "Guest room's ready," he said. "Stay as long as you need." I dropped the bag on the bed and sat down, feeling the day finally catch up with me. Nathan leaned against the doorframe. "You good?" "I will be," I said. He nodded. "Beer's in the fridge. Kelly made extra lasagna if you're hungry." "I'm all right," I told him. "Just need to sit for a minute." He left me alone, and I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The house was quiet, except for the faint sound of the TV downstairs. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was drowning. The next few days passed in a strange kind of limbo. I went to work, came back to Nathan's, helped with the kids when Kelly needed a hand. I didn't check my phone obsessively. I didn't wait for Cassandra to call or text. I just existed in the space I'd created, letting the distance do its work. On Friday, Marianne called with an update. She's responded through her attorney. They're not contesting the filing. Looks like she wants this done quickly, too. "Good," I said. "We'll move forward with asset division. Should be straightforward since there's no kids, no major complications. You'll probably have a final hearing within a few months." I thanked her and hung up. Carlos asked me at lunch how I was holding up. "One day at a time," I told him. "That's the only way to do it," he replied. Saturday, I drove back to the house to pick up more of my things. Cassandra wasn't there. I moved through the rooms methodically, taking what was mine, leaving what wasn't. My books, my tools, my clothes. I left the furniture, the dishes, the decorative things she'd picked out over the years. In the garage, I found the old lamp I'd fixed. It was unplugged, sitting on a shelf like it had never been used. I unplugged it, wrapped the cord around the base, and added it to my pile.
By the time I finished, I had 3 boxes, 2 bags, and a sense of finality that felt more like relief than sadness. I loaded everything into my truck and drove back to Nathan's without looking back. That night, Kelly made dinner and we all ate together. Emma told me about her school project. Lucas showed me a drawing he'd made of a dinosaur eating a pizza. Nathan asked if I wanted to watch the game later. It felt normal. It felt good. It felt like the beginning of something I didn't know I needed until I finally let myself have it. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in March. I wore a suit I'd bought 2 days before, nothing expensive but clean and professional. Marianne met me outside the courthouse, briefcase in hand, and gave me a quick rundown of what to expect. The judge would review the asset division, confirm both parties agreed to the terms, and sign off on the dissolution. Simple, transactional, final. Cassandra arrived with her attorney, a woman in a sharp blazer who looked like she charged by the minute. We didn't make eye contact. We sat on opposite sides of the hallway, waiting for our case to be called. I watched people come and go, some looking relieved, others looking shattered. I felt neither. I just felt ready. When they called our names, we filed into the courtroom. The judge was an older man with gray hair and reading glasses perched on his nose. He reviewed the documents, asked a few standard questions, and confirmed we both understood the terms. Cassandra's voice was quiet when she answered. Mine was steady. The judge signed the papers, stamped them, and said the dissolution was granted. Just like that, it was over. We walked out of the courtroom in silence. In the hallway, Cassandra stopped and turned to me. "I hope you find what you're looking for," she said, her tone somewhere between bitter and genuine. "I already did," I replied. "It's called peace." She nodded once, then walked away with her attorney. I watched her go, feeling nothing but the weight lifting off my shoulders. Marianne shook my hand and told me the final documents would be mailed within a few weeks. I thanked her, walked out into the spring air, and drove back to work. Carlos was on the loading dock when I arrived. He looked at me, read my face, and gave a small nod. "It's done?" "It's done," I said. He clapped me on the shoulder. "Good man. Now the real work starts." "What's that?" "Figuring out who you are when nobody's telling you who to be." I spent the next few weeks settling into a routine that felt entirely mine. I found an apartment near the warehouse, a 1-bedroom on the 2nd floor with a balcony that overlooked a small courtyard. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and quiet. I moved in with the boxes from Nathan's garage, the lap I'd fixed, and a sense of possibility I hadn't felt in years. I bought a used couch from a thrift store, a coffee table that wobbled slightly but could be fixed, and a set of dishes that matched well enough. I hung my grandfather's tools on pegboard in the closet and set up a small workspace where I could tinker with things in the evenings. The apartment didn't have much, but everything in it was mine. Nathan and Kelly came over for dinner the first weekend. Kelly brought a housewarming plant, some kind of succulent that she promised was impossible to kill. Nathan brought beer and a toolbox he said I could borrow any time. Emma and Lucas ran around the empty living room like it was a playground, their laughter filling the space in a way that made it feel less lonely. We ordered pizza and ate on paper plates because I hadn't unpacked everything yet. Nathan raised his beer and said, "To new chapters." "To new chapters," I echoed. The weeks turned into months. I picked up a hobby I'd abandoned years ago, working on small engine repair. I'd find broken lawnmowers, leaf blowers, chainsaws at yard sales and estate sales, bring them home, and spend evenings diagnosing problems and making them run again. It was satisfying work, the kind where you could see the results immediately. Something broken became something functional. Simple cause and effect. I started selling the repaired equipment online, not for profit, but just to clear space and keep the cycle going. People would come by to pick up a mower or a trimmer, and sometimes we'd talk for a few minutes about what was wrong with it, how I fixed it, what to watch out for in the future. Those conversations felt honest in a way that most conversations don't. At work, Rick promoted me to senior logistics coordinator. It came with a modest raise and more responsibility, neither of which I'd asked for, but both of which I appreciated. The job kept me busy, kept my mind occupied, and gave me a sense of purpose that extended beyond just showing up and collecting a paycheck. Carlos and I started having lunch together regularly, sometimes at the loading dock, sometimes at a sandwich shop down the street. We'd talk about work, about life, about the small victories that add up over time. He told me about his daughter's graduation, his son's baseball games, his wife's new job. I told him about the engines I was fixing, the apartment I was slowly furnishing, the quiet satisfaction of waking up without dread. One afternoon in late summer, I was at a yard sale picking through a box of old tools when I saw her, Cassandra. She was on the other side of the driveway, looking at furniture with someone I didn't recognize. A man, tall, dressed casually, laughing at something she said. She saw me at the same time I saw her. We both froze for a second, and then she gave a small, awkward wave. I nodded back. The man with her noticed the exchange and looked between us, clearly picking up on something. She said something to him, and they moved toward a different section of the sale. I paid for the tools I'd picked out, loaded them into my truck, and drove away without looking back. I didn't feel anger or jealousy. I didn't feel anything except a mild curiosity about whether she was happy now. And then even that faded before I reached the end of the block. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a beer and watched the sun go down. The courtyard below was empty except for a cat that wandered through every night around the same time. I'd started leaving a small dish of water out for it, and it had taken to sitting near my door for a few minutes before moving on. My phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Family cookout this Sunday. You're coming." "I'll be there," I replied. "Kelly's making her potato salad. Don't be late." I smiled and set the phone down. The cat appeared right on schedule, drank from the dish, and sat in the fading light cleaning its paws. I watched it for a while, appreciating the simplicity of its routine. Sunday came, and I drove to Nathan's with a case of soda and a bag of charcoal. The backyard was full of people, cousins I hadn't seen in years, Kelly's parents, a few neighbors. Emma and Lucas ran circles around the adults while Nathan manned the grill with the focus of a surgeon. Kelly handed me a plate piled high with food and told me to find a seat. I ended up at a picnic table with Nathan's father-in-law, a retired mechanic who spent 20 minutes telling me about a carburetor problem he'd finally solved on a vintage motorcycle. I listened, asked questions, and felt the kind of contentment that comes from being around people who don't need anything from you except your presence. As the sun started setting, Nathan pulled me aside. "You look good, Allen. Really good." "I feel good," I told him. "Kelly thinks you should meet her friend Rachel. She's a teacher, likes hiking, recently single." "I appreciate it," I said, "but I'm not looking right now." "Fair enough," he replied. "Just know the offer stands." I stayed until the fire pit was lit and the kids were starting to wind down. I said my goodbyes, hugged Kelly, and drove home with the windows down and the radio off, just the sound of the road and the night air. Back at my apartment, I checked the dishes in the sink, wiped down the counter, and straightened the couch cushions. Small tasks that kept the space in order. The lamp I'd fixed sat on the side table, glowing warm and steady. I turned it off, checked the lock on the door, and went to bed. I didn't dream about her anymore. I didn't think about what could have been or what went wrong. I just slept, deep and uninterrupted, and woke up ready for whatever the day required. Months passed, the seasons changed. I kept fixing engines, kept showing up to work, kept living a life that fit me instead of trying to fit into someone else's version of what life should be. I started running in the mornings, nothing serious, just a few miles to clear my head before the day started. I joined a weekend volleyball league that Carlos invited me to, played poorly but enjoyed it anyway. One Saturday, I was working on a chainsaw in my apartment when there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Mrs. Kim, the neighbor from my old street. She was holding a casserole dish covered in foil. "Allen," she said, smiling, "I was in the area and thought I'd drop this off. I made too much and figured you could use a home-cooked meal." I took the dish, genuinely touched. "That's really kind of you, Mrs. Kim, thank you." She waved it off. "You always kept your yard nice. It's the least I could do. How are you settling in?" "Really well," I told her. "This place suits me." "Good," she said. "You deserve it." She patted my arm and walked back down the hallway. I closed the door, set the casserole on the counter, and felt a swell of gratitude for the small kindnesses that people offer when you're not expecting them. That evening, I reheated the casserole, ate it slowly while watching a documentary about the history of railroads, and felt completely at ease. The apartment was quiet, the lamp glowed. The cat showed up right on time, drank from its dish, and disappeared into the night. I thought about the flowers I'd bought all those months ago, the ones that wilted on the counter while Cassandra laughed. I thought about how much weight I'd carried trying to make something work that was already broken. I thought about the moment I finally decided to stop carrying it. And then I stopped thinking about it altogether. Because the truth is, peace doesn't come from getting what you want. It comes from knowing what you need and having the courage to choose it. I needed respect. I needed partnership. I needed someone who didn't laugh at effort. I didn't find that with her, but I found it with myself, and that turned out to be enough. I washed my plate, turned off the lamp, and went to bed. Tomorrow, I'd wake up early, go for a run, fix another engine, show up to work, and live another day in a life I'd built on my terms. No grand gestures, no dramatic endings. Just a man who learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is walk away from what's hurting you and walk toward what makes you whole. And that's exactly what I did. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.